Two cities, two masterpieces, one vision that changed the world of art forever. From the spiraling white curves of New York to the shining titanium waves of Bilbao, these museums are more than buildings, they are living works of art. Places where creativity becomes architecture, and architecture becomes emotion. This is the story of how the Guggenheim redefined what a museum could be, and how it continues to inspire the world today. Morning rises over New York City. The light drifts across the skyline and falls upon a strange, beautiful shape on Fifth Avenue, a white spiral, soft and flowing, unlike any building around it. This is the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. Designed by the legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright, it broke every rule of traditional architecture when it opened in 1959. It was not a box, not a palace, not a temple. It was a living organism, built to move people through art, as if through time itself. Across the ocean, in the Basque city of Bilbao, another masterpiece emerged decades later. The Guggenheim Museum built rising beside the Nervion River. It glows with waves of silver titanium, curving and bending like a sculpture brought to life. Designed by Frank Gehry and opened in it became a modern miracle, a museum that transformed not only the art world but an entire city's destiny. These two museums, though separated by continents, share one heartbeat: the belief that art should not be contained by walls, but should live, breathe, and inspire. They show that a museum is not just a place to see paintings and sculptures. It is a world of emotion, light, and imagination. It can change the way we see not only art but ourselves. This is a story of how the Guggenheim transformed the idea of what a museum could be, and redefined the relationship between art, city, and imagination. A story of visionaries and architects, of artists and dreamers, of two buildings that became symbols of the power of creativity. A story that begins not just with art, but with a dream to change the world. The story begins in the early years of the 20th century, a time when the art world was changing forever. In New York City, an American industrialist named Solomon R. Guggenheim was quietly building a new kind of legacy. Born into wealth from his family's mining fortune, Guggenheim could have chosen a life of comfort and luxury. But instead, he found himself drawn to something far less ordinary: the world of modern art. Through his friendship with Baroness Hiller von Ribe, an artist and visionary thinker, Guggenheim discovered a new philosophy of creativity. Ribe believed in what she called non-objective art, art that expressed emotion, spirituality, and energy through shapes, color, and movement, rather than realistic images. To her, abstract art was not just decoration, it was a window into the human soul. Under her guidance, Solomon Guggenheim began collecting works by revolutionary artists, Vasily Kandinsky, Piet Mondrian, Paul Klee, and many others whose ideas challenged everything people thought art should be. These were not paintings meant to be admired quietly in drawing rooms. They were explosions of feeling, visions of a new reality. But Guggenheim and Ribe had a dream that went beyond collecting. They wanted to share this new art with the world, to create a museum unlike any other, where visitors could experience creativity as a living force. In 1939, they opened the Museum of Non-Objective Painting on East 54th Street in Manhattan. Inside, the rooms were filled with soft music, scented air, and walls painted in gentle colors to help visitors feel calm and open to the art around them. It was an entirely new experience, emotional, immersive, and deeply personal. Yet, even as the museum gained attention, Guggenheim and Ribe imagined something greater. They dreamed of a permanent home, a place that would stand as a beacon for the art of the future. A building that would not only hold masterpieces but would itself be a masterpiece. A space that would lift the human spirit and change how people saw the world. This dream would soon bring them together with one of the greatest architects who ever lived, Frank Lloyd Wright. And together, they would create a building that would change the course of art and architecture forever. When Solomon Guggenheim and Hiller von Ribe began imagining a permanent museum for their collection, they wanted more than just walls to hang paintings. They wanted a place that would embody the spirit of the art itself, free, flowing, alive. And for that vision, there was only one man bold enough to bring it to life: the American architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright was already a legend. His buildings were not static boxes. They were living forms inspired by nature, organic, harmonious, and human. When Ribe approached him in she told him that the new museum should feel like a temple of the spirit. Wright accepted the challenge, and what he designed was something the world had never seen before. Instead of a traditional museum made of rectangular galleries, Wright imagined a great white spiral rising toward the sky. A single continuous ramp would lead visitors upward through the space, guiding them past the artworks as if they were floating in a river of light. At the top, a vast glass dome would flood the interior with natural sunlight. Wright said he wanted people to climb from earth to heaven through art. It was a radical idea, too radical for some. Critics feared that his unconventional design would distract from the paintings. Some artists even complained that the slanted walls and curved ramps would make it impossible to hang their work properly. But Wright remained unmoved. He believed that architecture itself was an art form, and that the experience of space could be as powerful as the art it contained. Construction began in 1956. On New York's Fifth Avenue near Central Park, it was not an easy process. Wright clashed with city planners, engineers, and even the Guggenheim Foundation. He insisted on every detail: the curves, the materials, the way the light should move across the interior. Years passed, costs rose, and both Solomon Guggenheim and Hilla von Riebe would not live to see the museum completed. Frank Lloyd Wright himself died in 1989, just months before the grand opening. But when the doors finally opened on October 21st of that year, the world stood in awe. Before them rose a structure unlike anything ever built, a smooth white spiral stretching upward, bathed in light, bold and serene against the angular skyline of Manhattan. Inside, the ramp carried visitors in a continuous journey of art, space, and motion. It was more than a museum. It was a revolution. The Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum had arrived. A living symbol of human creativity, it would become one of the most recognizable buildings on Earth, and a masterpiece that would forever change how people experienced art. From the moment it opened, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum captured the imagination of the world. Crowds gathered outside on Fifth Avenue, staring up at the strange white spiral that seemed to defy gravity and tradition. In a city of sharp angles and straight lines, this building curved like a seashell, soft and organic, a living contrast to the world around it. Inside, sunlight poured through the glass dome at the top, cascading down the smooth ramp and bathing the walls in a warm, natural glow. There were no dark, square rooms, no long corridors. Instead, visitors moved in a gentle upward flow, surrounded by art, space, and light. Each step carried them closer to the sky. For many, the experience was unlike any other museum in the world. Art wasn't just displayed, it was part of a continuous journey. From the base of the spiral to the skylit summit, the Guggenheim invited people to experience art as movement, as energy, as emotion. Paintings by Kandinsky, Mondrian, and Pollock seemed to vibrate against the curved walls, their colors echoing the rhythm of the space itself. At first, the reaction was mixed. Some critics said Wright's masterpiece was too strange, too unconventional. They argued that the architecture overshadowed the art, but others saw genius, a perfect harmony between form and function, between structure and spirit. Even those who doubted could not deny its power. As time passed, the museum became one of New York's most beloved icons, a place where modern art found its most daring home. Tourists and artists alike came not only to see what was inside, but to experience the building itself. Standing beneath the great skylight, many felt the same sensation Wright had envisioned, a quiet, upward motion, as if lifted toward the light. The Guggenheim wasn't just a museum anymore. It was a symbol, a monument to the boundless possibilities of imagination. It stood for courage, for innovation, and for the belief that art and architecture could exist as one living expression. In the years that followed, this idea that a museum could be a work of art would travel far beyond New York. The Guggenheim name would soon find a new home, in a city across the ocean. And once again, it would change everything. In the decades that followed its opening, the Guggenheim Museum in New York became a global landmark, not just of art, but of vision. Its white spiral drew millions of visitors each year, all seeking the same feeling of wonder that Frank Lloyd Wright had imagined. But, for the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation, this was only the beginning. The foundation's mission was clear: to make modern art accessible to the world, to bring creativity into every corner of life. And so began a new era, one of expansion, collaboration, and imagination. In 1976, the foundation opened a branch in Venice, Italy. The Peggy Guggenheim Collection, housed in a former palace along the Grand Canal. There, among the gentle ripples of the water, another chapter of the Guggenheim story unfolded. It became a haven for European modernism, home to works by Picasso, Dali, and Jackson Pollock. The spirit of Guggenheim was spreading across continents, across cultures, across time. By the 1980s and 1990s, the Guggenheim Foundation was dreaming even bigger. It envisioned a network of museums, each unique, each shaped by its city, yet all bound by the same belief that art and architecture could inspire people everywhere. But no one could have predicted where this dream would lead next. In northern Spain, far from the major art capitals of the world, lay the industrial city of Bilbao, a city of steel, shipyards, and smoke. Once powerful, now fading. Its factories had fallen silent, its riverbanks were empty, and its people longed for renewal. The Basque government wanted to bring life back to Bilbao, and when they reached out to the Guggenheim Foundation, they proposed something extraordinary: a new museum that could transform the city's image forever. It was a bold idea, almost unbelievable at the time. How could a museum change the fate of an entire city? But the Guggenheim Foundation believed in the power of art to do exactly that, and so began one of the most ambitious architectural projects in modern history. The project that would give rise to one of the most astonishing buildings the world had ever seen. This new Guggenheim would not stand in New York or Paris or London. It would rise in Bilbao, a city ready to be reborn through the language of art and design. In the early 1990s, Bilbao was a city searching for hope. The factories that once powered its economy had closed. The air hung heavy with memories of smoke and steel. The river that cut through its heart had gone silent, but beneath the quiet there was still a pulse, the determination of a people who refused to let their city fade away. The Basque government began to imagine a new future, not one built on industry, but on creativity. They reached out to the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation with a daring proposal to build a museum so extraordinary, so inspiring, that it would put Bilbao back on the map of the world. It was a gamble. Many doubted the idea. Could a single museum truly transform an entire city? But both sides believed in something greater, the power of art to spark rebirth. The foundation turned to a man known for his fearless imagination. The architect, Frank Gehry, was not interested in designing ordinary buildings. His creations looked like dreams made solid, bold, abstract forms that twisted, curved, and shone in the light. When he first visited the site by the Nervion River, surrounded by bridges and old shipyards, he saw potential where others saw decay. He saw movement, he saw life, he saw possibility. Gehry's vision began to take shape, a building that would look like it had grown out of the earth and water around it. He used cutting-edge computer modeling to design sweeping titanium curves that caught the sunlight and seemed to change color throughout the day. From some angles, it looked like a ship. From others, a flower. From all perspectives, it was alive. Construction began in 1993. The people of Bilbao watched as their riverbank transformed, steel rising, titanium panels shimmering in the mist. By 1997, the structure was complete, and the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao opened its doors to the world. What stood before the public was nothing short of miraculous. The building appeared to float, its metallic skin reflecting the river, the sky, and the city itself. Inside, vast galleries unfolded like hidden worlds, open, light-filled, and endlessly inviting. The museum instantly became a symbol of renewal. Art lovers, travelers, and architects from around the world came to see it. The city, once forgotten, was alive again. Hotels filled, restaurants opened, and pride returned to Bilbao's streets. The Guggenheim Bilbao was more than a museum. It was proof that creativity could rebuild what industry had left behind. It was the spark of a movement that would be known everywhere as the Bilbao effect. The power of art and architecture to transform not only skyline, but entire communities. When the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao opened in 1997, the world took notice. What had once been an industrial port city was now the center of a global conversation about art, architecture, and urban rebirth. People came from every corner of the world to see the shimmering titanium sculpture by Frank Gehry that rose beside the Nervion River like a living creature. The effect was immediate and powerful. In just a few years, Bilbao's economy began to change. Tourism surged, new businesses opened, and the city's spirit was reborn. Where once there had been empty streets and closed factories, there was now movement, laughter, and light. A city that had been defined by its past. It became a symbol of the future. Economists and architects began calling it the Bilbao effect. It became a term used to describe how a single piece of visionary architecture could breathe new life into an entire city. But what made the Guggenheim Bilbao truly remarkable was that it went beyond economics. It wasn't just about tourism or revenue. It was about identity. The museum gave Bilbao a new voice, a new confidence, a new soul. For the people who lived there, the Guggenheim was more than a landmark. It was a mirror, reflecting not just the sunlight and the river, but the strength and creativity of the Basque people. It showed that culture could be as powerful as industry, that imagination could rebuild a city's pride. Inside, the museum became a cathedral of modern and contemporary art. Massive installations by Richard Serra curved through the galleries like steel rivers. Jeff Koons' gleaming puppy stood outside the entrance, covered in blooming flowers, a joyful guardian of the museum's gates. Each piece added to the sense of wonder, turning every visit into an emotional experience. The Guggenheim Bilbao became a symbol for cities everywhere, proof that art could be an engine of change. Governments, planners, and artists around the world looked to Bilbao as inspiration. They asked the same question: if one museum could do this, what else could creativity achieve? And through it all, the Guggenheim Foundation remained faithful to its purpose, to celebrate human imagination in all its forms. From New York to Venice, and now to Bilbao, the Guggenheim name stood for innovation, vision, and courage. The Bilbao effect was not just an event, it was a message, a reminder that art has the power to transform not only walls and cities, but hearts and minds. Step inside, and you enter a world where art and architecture speak to each other, where the walls are not barriers, but part of the story. In New York, the journey begins at the base of Frank Lloyd Wright's Great Spiral. Visitors stand in the open rotunda, looking upward as the ramp winds gracefully toward the glass dome above. The space feels alive, calm yet full of energy, like the inside of a seashell glowing with light. Here, art is not confined to rooms or corners. Instead, it follows the flow of the ramp, unfolding like a visual symphony. Each painting and sculpture reveals itself gradually as you move along the curve. Pieces by Kandinsky, Picasso, Pollock, and Rothko, all shimmering under natural light. The experience is meditative, continuous, timeless. You don't just look at art in the Guggenheim, New York, you move through it. Across the ocean, the Guggenheim Bilbao offers a completely different kind of experience. Frank Gehry's design feels like walking through a dream, a vast labyrinth of metal and glass, where light and reflection dance across every surface. The titanium walls ripple like waves, and each gallery opens into another world. One moment you find yourself surrounded by massive steel sculptures that seem to bend space itself, and the next you stand before bold contemporary installations that stretch from floor to ceiling. Inside Bilbao's grand atrium, sunlight streams in through towering windows, illuminating the building's heart. The air carries the quiet hum of footsteps, whispers, and awe. Everywhere you look, there is movement, the gentle curve of the ramps, the shimmering reflections on the floor, the dialogue between art and architecture. It feels less like a museum and more like a living organism, one that breathes, shifts, and changes with every visitor who walks through it. Despite their differences, both museums share the same spirit. They invite people not only to view art, but to feel it, to lose themselves in the experience of space, color, and form. They blur the boundaries between creation and construction, between artist and architect. Every surface, every line, every echo is part of the artwork. Standing in either museum, you realize the genius of the Guggenheim vision, that a museum is not merely a container for art, it is itself an act of art. Each in its own way, transforms the visitor into a participant in the creative journey. You are not just observing, you are part of the story. The Guggenheim Museums stand today as symbols of courage, monuments to the power of imagination and the belief that art can change the world. Both Frank Lloyd Wright and Frank Gehry dared to challenge the rules. They didn't just design buildings, they sculpted experiences. Their creations broke traditions, redefined beauty, and invited people to see the world differently. Wright's Guggenheim in New York was revolutionary in its time. When it opened in 1959, critics called it strange, radical, even impossible. Some said its spiral form would overshadow the art inside. But decades later, it has become one of the most beloved and iconic structures on Earth. Proof that true innovation often begins with defiance. Wright believed that architecture should be organic, that buildings should grow naturally from their purpose. And in doing so, he gave birth to a masterpiece that continues to inspire generations of artists and dreamers. Gehry, too, faced skepticism when he unveiled his vision for Bilbao. People wondered how a gleaming titanium sculpture could possibly fit within a city known for its industrial past. But when the doors opened in 1997, the answer was clear. It didn't just fit, it transformed everything around it. Gehry's Guggenheim wasn't just a museum. It was an act of urban poetry. It showed that art and architecture could work hand in hand to spark renewal, hope, and pride. Together, the two Guggenheims form a dialogue between eras, a bridge connecting modernist purity and postmodern freedom. Wright's clean spiral and Gehry's chaotic curves are opposites in form, yet identical in spirit. Both remind us that creativity thrives when it breaks boundaries. Both stand as testaments to human imagination, bold, unpredictable, and eternal. The Guggenheim legacy is more than architecture. It's a philosophy. It says that art belongs to everyone, that beauty has no limits, and that design can shape not only spaces, but emotions. From the ramp in New York to the riverbank in Bilbao, these museums invite people to dream, to imagine new possibilities for the world around them. And in every painting, every sculpture, every shimmering panel of metal or curve of concrete, that spirit lives on. It whispers a timeless message that the future of art is not confined to walls. It's built in the spaces where imagination meets reality. As the sun sets over New York and rises over Bilbao, the two Guggenheim museums seem to breathe in rhythm, one city drifting into twilight, the other awakening in light. Across continents and decades, their forms echo one another, spirals and curves, glass and metal, dream and reality. They are not just museums. They are conversations between artists and architects, between cities and their souls, between humanity and its boundless imagination. The Guggenheim name has come to represent more than a collection of art. It is a symbol of transformation. It proves that creativity has the power to rebuild a skyline, to revive a city, to touch the deepest parts of who we are. Each museum stands as a reminder that beauty and innovation are not luxuries. They are necessities for a world that seeks meaning. In New York, visitors walk upward along Wright's spiral ramp, rising through layers of color and form until they reach the glass dome, a metaphor for enlightenment. In Bilbao, sunlight glides across Gehry's titanium skin, reflecting the sky, the river, and the city's reborn spirit. Together, they form a dialogue of time and possibility, to masterpieces speaking in one voice. That voice tells us something simple and profound, that art is not confined to museums or galleries. It lives in the way we see the world, in the curves of a building, the rhythm of a city, the spark of an idea. Every street, every reflection, every breath can be a canvas for creation. The Guggenheim Museums remind us that when architecture dares to dream and art dares to move beyond its frame, something miraculous happens. we begin to see not just what exists, but what could be. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all, that through the vision of two architects, two cities, and one enduring idea, the world itself becomes the museum, vast, living, and forever unfinished.